From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Appreciate you tuning in for another episode of the Wildcast podcast. I'm Arizona Daily Star's Justin Spears, sitting alongside Alec White. We're talking all things Arizona basketball on this podcast, per usual, because it's basketball season. So we're going to talk some men's hoops, some women's hoops. It's an exciting time to follow Arizona Wildcats basketball. And if you want to follow all of the Arizona Daily Star's coverage on U of A hoops, don't forget to download the Wildcaster app for free off the App Store and Google Play. Little loophole for all you sports fans. You don't need a subscription to the Arizona Daily Star. You don't need to pay for it. All you got to do is just go to the App Store or Google Play, depending on what kind of phone you have. Search the Wildcaster and then download it, and all content on all things Arizona Wildcats is at your fingertips, whether it's stories, videos, photo galleries, podcasts, you name it. It's all right there on that Wildcaster app. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to the Wildcast on Apple, Spotify, or other podcasting platforms. It's an exciting time, Alec. It's late January, early February, so we're now getting down to the final stretch of the regular season. Before you know it, March Madness is here.
Yeah.
And both Arizona teams, in fact, the Wildcats are the only school in the country that can say they have top 10 teams in both men and women's basketball.
Well, not only that, but on the other side of that, this is the first time the season has really felt normal, to be honest with you, because we're now left wondering, is the sky falling after one loss to UCLA? How long has it been? It's been a long time since we've had to sit here and have a discussion about, what's wrong with Arizona Wildcats men's basketball. So teams are both in the top 10 doing real well, but the more normal part is sitting here reacting after a loss to UCLA, because it just feels like the fan base after Tuesday night's loss is just up in arms and with pitchforks about the play of Kirk Kriisa, Ben Mathurin, losing 6 in a row to UCLA. So lots to talk about.
Arizona fans overreacting?
Never has happened before.
Shocker. I'm here to tell you that you shouldn't overreact. And I think Alec's probably going to say the exact same thing. I want to go back to your point, though, about it's kind of weird talking about what's wrong with his Arizona team after a loss. And when we've, over the last few years, have been talking about what's wrong with this Arizona team with the cloud, the NCAA investigation and all that stuff, which, by the way, somebody asked us about that in our Twitter mailbag, in which we'll answer that kind of towards the end of the podcast. But the sky's not falling. Arizona did lose to UCLA, like Alec mentioned. It was the first time that Arizona has scored under 60 points of the Tommy Lloyd era. The last time they scored under 60 points, you had to go to February 4th of last year against Utah. And it was an off night offensively for Arizona, right? They shot 31% as a team. That's a season low. Kirk Kriisa was 0 for 12 from the field, 0 for 9 from three-point range. And he just kept letting those things fly. And it just reminded me of that quote that Dion Waiters, old NBA player, had. Dion Waiters said, "I'd rather go 0 for 30 than 0 for 9 because that means I lost confidence." But regardless, Kirk Kriisa had a terrible night shooting. When you take away Christian Coloco and Umar Ballo, Arizona shot 23% as a team. And considering top 10 team on the road, you're undefeated in Pac-12 play, right? The only loss that you had before that game was at Tennessee. The fact that you played so horribly and yet you were right there in it until the last 3 or 4 minutes of the game, I think bodes well for Arizona. And UCLA, this is a team that went to a Final Four last year. They returned all their players. They're playing at home. They allowed fans back into Pauley. So, the chips were kind of stacked against Arizona, even though the Wildcats were favored by 2.5 points. Azuolas Tubelis having an injury as well. So when your star forward is playing at pretty much 65, 70%, it's really tough. And that's why I'm here to say, don't panic. It's one game. But how they respond next time around when they play at McHale Center, that's really a sign of what this team is made of.
Yeah, the good news is that they've got 3 straight home games following this. They play ASU on Saturday. That place, McHale's going to be rocking for that one. Then they get a nice 4-day break and play UCLA in the rematch on Thursday. So you're going to take any positives. You get to play UCLA, again. Coming up, you get a nice tune-up against ASU. Hopefully, Tubelis is able to rest up. We'll see if he plays Saturday against the Sun Devils, and Arizona gets a full week between the loss against the Bruins and Pauley, and then coming back home playing McHale, and then they get USC on that Saturday. So 3-day home stretch, but also a very important 3-day home stretch in terms of the Pac-12 sorting out who's going to take control of the conference, because the loss means UCLA and Arizona are right there neck and neck for the Pac-12 regular season crown.
Yeah.
And it'll probably get decided next weekend when both LA schools come to town. Another point I want to add is, yes, the sky isn't falling, and we can dive into this more, but the way in which they've lost is a little concerning, getting blown out, because the 3 best teams they've played, I said this on your ESPN Tucson with you yesterday, the loss didn't really bother me. It's the way it happened that kind of bothered me, because it mirrored what happened against Illinois and against Tennessee, where Arizona just didn't show up in the first half and had to claw their way back. They did it. They were fortunate to do it against Illinois. They had some calls go against them against Tennessee. UCLA is much better than Illinois and Tennessee, and Arizona couldn't afford to have a slow start, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, it was actually a really fast start.
It was.
It was the last half of the first half.
Well, it was after the first 5 minutes. The TV timeout.
The first TV break.
we were
like 11 to 10 or something like that.
No, 16 to 14. It was 16 to 14 at the TV timeout. And the teams were combined. They were on pace to combine for over 200 points. It was just something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then obviously Arizona's offense fell apart. So, they didn't necessarily no-show right out of the gate, but as soon as UCLA got settled, UCLA was able to take advantage and speed Arizona up and let Arizona make the mistakes, and the Wildcats were more than happy to make those mistakes.
You look at Kirk Risa going 0 for 12. Ben Mather went 5 for 22. You combine those together, 5 for 34 shooting from your backcourt is not a good recipe for success. But I think they're going to get right again. ASU this upcoming weekend. It's a rivalry game. It's at McHale Center. So you're at home, like you said. And ASU, they're just in a really rough spot right now. The way they lost to Stanford was really tough. They almost came back in that game. They were down by 21 points, I believe, and then they rallied back, had a chance to win it, and they didn't. Stanford was able to pull away, and then Bobby Hurley kind of goes over and yells at the refs a little bit and walks off. You had one of their guys, I don't know why I'm blanking on who the guy was, but he went over and kind of like body checked the ref.
One of the assistants.
Yeah. The
player.
The player, the ASU player, kind of came over and I'm not saying body checked him. He came over, kind of put his chest into him a little bit and said something towards the refs, and you just can't do that. So he got some repercussions. Bobby Hurley was also fined.
Jay Heath,
yes.
The player.
And it just seems like everything is kind of boiling over for ASU. The Bobby Hurley era is going to come to an end. If this isn't sourced by any means, but if I'm a betting man, I'm betting that Bobby Hurley is not on the sidelines at ASU next year. So it's a down ASU team. So I kind of feel bad for the Sun Devils, because you got one of the best teams in college basketball right now pissed off, coming back home, looking to take out all their frustrations and anger, all their issues that they experienced at UCLA, and take it out on them at McHale Center. So it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back, but I'm really curious to see that game next week against UCLA at McHale and how they bounce back. But one of my favorite things since the last time we did a podcast, Alec, has been the rise of Umar Ballo.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite storylines, because I was kind of curious, because he didn't really play much at Gonzaga. Was the guy that was just off the bench, but he was a huge Tommy Lloyd guy. And Tommy Lloyd brings him over to Arizona. I'm like, okay, well, what's his development going to be like? Then he, right off the bat, okay, he's big. There's something there. And then he kind of fell into a lull where he just felt like, is he a Division I college basketball player because of his size? It was like him struggling to get up the court at times, and him not being able to catch the ball. But over the last few games, Oumar Ballo at UCLA was 3 for 3, had 7 points. And then in the Bay Area trip, he averaged 17 and 6 off the bench. That's what you want to see in your big man, especially when Azuolas gets hurt, when Christian Koloko gets into foul trouble. You need that size, and Oumar Ballo is going to be a huge factor for Arizona's front court. So to see kind of the rise in his play over the last couple of weeks, I thought has been a positive development for Arizona. And
it's a positive development because they lost one of their front court players in Kim Aiken. We don't know if he's going to be back this season, but
that's a good point.
During the non-conference season, Kim Aiken, it was ruled out for personal reasons. We don't know what the issues were. We don't know if he's going to be back this season. So Arizona was losing a little bit of front court depth, and Kim Aiken and Oumar Ballo are vastly different players in terms of their skill set. Aiken can kind of step out and shoot threes, as we saw during the early part when he was playing. But Oumar Ballo's physical presence is just a great complement to what Christian Koloko and Azuolas Tubelis do, because you can mix and match the lineups. If you want to, you give Koloko some rest, you can plug in Ballo, and you'll get very efficient numbers from him. He's shooting over 60%, and granted, those are a lot of close, near the rim shots, layups, and dunks. But to be shooting over 60% from the front court, grabbing a couple of rebounds, just guys that can be a physical presence around the rim for Arizona, and without losing the speed at which Arizona plays, is very critical.
Oumar Ballo went from, being a big body like a Kirill Natyashko to then being a key contributor off the bench like a Chance Comanche almost. And that's another, what if Chance Comanche came back and stuck it out with Arizona? The world may never know. But, Arizona, they pick up their first loss in Pac-12 play. They're now 16-2 on the season. Still right there at the top of the Pac-12 standings with UCLA. And it's going to be a race to the finish line. And then, what I can see happening is both of these teams meeting up in the Pac-12 championship. And, there's seeding on the line for Arizona at that point. UCLA is obviously trying to improve their seeding. But it's going to be the rubber match. Assuming Arizona turns around and beats UCLA at McHale Center. But, I could also see a situation where Arizona might lose a game to UCLA at McHale and then turn around and beat them in the Pac-12 tournament, kind of like what we saw in 2017.
Yeah, well, Arizona did – that was the rubber match. The 2017 was
that's right, because they won on the road.
That was the Alonzo Trier game
that's
at
right.
Pauley, and then the return, the second game, UCLA won the game 2.
That was the birth of LeVar Ball.
That was a TJ Leaf, Bryce Alford, Lonzo Ball special in McHale Center with College Game Day, and then the Pac-12 championship game. But you're very right. Your original point stands that I would love to see these two teams face off in the Pac-12 championship in Vegas, because you're more than likely one of these two teams is going to be the number 1 seed for the tournament, and maybe whoever is right behind gets a number 2 seed, and that would potentially have them facing off in the championship round. The world deserves UCLA Arizona round 3.
Yeah.
But whether that comes in the Pac-12 tournament or whether that comes in March Madness down the line remains to be seen. Maybe it's 4 games, but two is not enough, because
Rocky IV was my favorite movie out of the bunch. So
Pac-12's the best rivalry in the Pac-12 is back. That's for sure.
So let's hope we get the Rocky movies instead of The Godfather, because Godfather 3 was the worst one of them all. Godfather 2 is the good one. So maybe the second match at McHale Center is going to be like Godfather 2.
Is Rocky IV is with Ivan. Right?
Ivan, yep. He does. All right, so we'll talk more men's basketball coming up in just a few moments when we go to our Twitter mailbag. But let's move along to the U of A women's basketball team, the 8th-ranked Wildcats, pulling off a huge comeback on Wednesday against the UCLA Bruins, completing that double-digit comeback. Arizona beats the Bruins on the road. The final score is 74-63, and it's the first time they won at Pauley Pavilion in, what was it?
Since 2007.
2007. So it's been a minute. What was life like for the Arizona Wildcats in 2007? I believe Joan Bonvicini was coaching Arizona at that time. Lute Olson was still coaching. No, it was 06. No. Yeah, that was Lute Olson's last year.
Last season, yeah.
The last year Lute was coaching for the Arizona Wildcats. So it's been a minute. I think Adia Barnes was probably playing professionally at that time. So it's been a minute since Arizona beat UCLA at Pauley Pavilion, but big win for the Wildcats. Shayna Pellington was the leading scorer. She had 20 points on 7 for 14 shooting, and she's kind of turned up a notch. Yeah. I'm not saying she's the next coming of Ari McDonald, but for filling into Ari's shoes, I think Shayna's done a nice job, especially over the last month.
Yeah, 20 points in back-to-back games was a huge reason why Arizona's been able to win the last couple games that they've had. She played very well. She had the game winner against Oregon State a couple weeks ago, and then has just really learned to take control of the game. I think that's one of the key things Arizona was missing maybe early in the year. Even though they got off to that undefeated start, they were just waiting for Shayna to take control of the offense, to orchestrate it the way Ari did, to get players in position. And Shayna's really fast and quick and driving to the rim. That's the one thing where she's very comparable to Ari in the fact that she can defend and she can get to the rim and get to the line, and is pretty good at being able to finish through contact. Certainly not necessarily the star power and shooting capability as Ari. I don't want to necessarily compare it all here, but very similar as to what made Arizona successful last year. Shayna's been able to kind of replicate that over the last month.
And Arizona ended the game on Wednesday on a 14-2 run. So it was
12-0 run yesterday.
12-0 run. Like it was neck and neck, and then Arizona just turned into fifth gear to end that game. So that was certainly a positive sight to see for Arizona and Adia Barnes' team. Now they move along to the rematch, the national title rematch. Stanford in Palo Alto on Sunday. Stanford's ranked number 2 in women's college basketball AP Top 25. So top 10 teams. It's great. Like I said, it's a fun time to be an Arizona basketball fan because you get to see Arizona UCLA on the men's side, and then Arizona-Stanford on the women's side. Both top 10 matchups involving the Arizona Wildcats, and it's going to be a fun one on Sunday.
Yeah, it's disappointing that there's no return trip for Stanford to McHale because it would have been close to a sellout for that one. These two teams only play each other once. But the good news, Arizona gets the Oregon schools again the following week in McHale. And Adia Barnes tweeted out this week that they've already sold over 8,000 tickets for both of those games. She's very passionate about packing the house, especially for Oregon when they come to town, given what we witnessed a couple weeks ago down in up in Eugene. So definitely exciting time.
Yep.
It's going to be tough for Arizona to beat Stanford because Cardinal firing on all cylinders this season. Arizona, it's going to be, outside of that title game rematch when it went down to the wire, Arizona's really struggled to beat Stanford, especially in Palo Alto. So they're going to have their hands full, but it's going to be a fun one.
All right, let's move along to Twitter mailbag questions. DS wants to ask, what are the current odds on Arizona basketball to win the national championship, and would you guys bet it? Not sure what the current odds are. We need to take a look at those odds, but I'm sure they probably have like the 6th or the 7th best odds to win the national championship. Of course, you're going to have your Gonzaga. You're going to have your Gonzagas, your Kansases, your Dukes, your Blue Bloods that are probably going to be up there. I probably bet that UCLA has higher odds to win the national championship. But would I bet it? I would bet it, just not a large amount. Because I would feel sick to my stomach because I think about, we've seen a lot of great Arizona teams, but none of them have been able to push through since 2001 in the Final Four. And it's been over 20 years since Arizona fans have been able to see their team in the Final Four, which is crazy to think has been that long. But, I would bet money on Arizona to win the national championship. Would I exceed my betting total over $20? Probably not.
No, so they're plus 1,300 right now. So if you bet 10, you'd win 130 if Arizona is able to win the national title. So decent odds. UCLA is plus 1,200. Gonzaga is the runaway favorite right now at plus 500. So if you bet 10, you'd only win 50 back. Some other teams, Baylor plus 850 with James Akinjo. They're firing on all cylinders right now. Kansas plus 1,100. Duke plus 1,200. Kentucky plus 1,600. Auburn plus 700. So those are your Gonzaga, Auburn, and Baylor right now are your leaders in the clubhouse.
Our next question comes from Steele's Reel. He asked, or they asked, do the Cats need someone who can dribble, penetrate to beat teams that match them in height? I mean, it certainly can help. And, I mean, if you're going to dribble, penetrate, who are you kicking it out to? Because usually, I mean, I think if you're going to, draw people in, like if somebody's going to get into the paint and drive to the basket and draw defenders, I would think it's probably a guy like Ben Mathurin as opposed to maybe a Kerr Kriisa. So with that being said, Kerr, he's got to improve his 3-point shooting. You can't go 0 for 12 on the road. You can't go 0 for 9 from 3-point range. But if that thing falls, Arizona is. I mean, they're one of the top ranked offenses in college basketball for a reason. So
I think Dalen Terry is a guy that can fit that mold as well, because he's not really an outside shooter. He can finish pretty well at the rim. But I think Tommy Lloyd over the next couple weeks is going to find ways to evolve Arizona's offense, especially with the loss against the Bruins. I think you're going to see some plays drawn up to get Mathurin some clean shots because he was just hounded against UCLA. I think the Bruins strategy was pretty clear that with Tubelis not 100%, they were just going to do everything they could to throw the book of everything defense at Mathurin, and 5 for 22. And I think Ben, what he's got to learn is to be able to draw contact. He only took 22 shots, but only got to the free throw line 6 times. I think that number, if he's going to take 22 shots, has to be a little closer to double digits. But definitely some things to improve on.
All right, our next question comes from at UA Cat Mandu. They ask, any update on time frame for sanctions decision? How is that influencing current recruiting? I don't think it's really having any impact on recruiting because Tommy Lloyd, I think, is expecting a number of guys to come back, and he's got Shane Noel, Adama Ball on the bench. Those guys are going to step up and have important roles. So Tommy Lloyd kind of got a good deal. Like, he doesn't have to come in and recruit a bunch of guys and get his players in right away. He's got a good nucleus of players, and then they're just going to continue to build. And also the transfer portal is a big thing now in college basketball. So I think that's why Tommy Lloyd, you only see Arizona with one commit or one signee for 2022, which is Dylan Anderson from Phoenix. And
you're probably going to see some international guys over, May to July time when the international guys start to make their decisions. You'll probably see Arizona heavily in the mix for some of those guys. So I'm not too concerned about not having a staple of recruits lined up for next season because, like you said, they're going to get some guys back. You've got freshmen playing on the team right now. They're going to be in the wings. So, and then the transfer portal, like that's the new mold for college basketball recruiting is getting guys through the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So,
and I think in terms of timeline, no idea.
Oh, okay. So I pulled up.
I know NC State just got theirs, but they didn't have a postseason ban. It was like pretty much like a slap on the wrist. They got fined, and then recruiting was limited.
Yeah, lost a scholarship or something like that. So the Division I Board of Directors, this was about exactly a week ago, they paused referrals to the IARP, which is where Arizona's case is going through the process right now. So like it's taking painfully slow through that process that other schools that want to use that process are being told, hey, we're pausing that because it's just taking so long to get through the current ones.
We're a little busy right now. Take a number.
Yeah. A timeline is as good as guess as anybody. Pick a date. it's probably wrong.
Which is crazy because, I mean, at that point, it's like, why are you going to punish the program? Like Sean Miller and all the assistants are long gone. Like Tommy Lloyd has nothing to do with it. The guys currently on the team have nothing to do with it. So it's all just silly to me. But I don't know a timeline, and I hope all of this gets resolved soon because it's just like a cloud that just doesn't seem to go away. John Goodman, not the John Goodman, I'm assuming, but he asked Aiken status. What are the rumors?
Again,
your guess is as good as ours.
Yeah, at this point, like I think you just have to assume that he's not going to be part of the team, going forward. And if he comes back, great, they'll work him back in. But right now, like he's missed, well over a month, probably closer to 2 months.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard for him, even if he does come back to work into a consistent lineup spot, because Tommy Lloyd has figured out the rotation. Like he's got guys. Ballo stepped up. Pelle Larsson has really come on as of late, especially with his 3-point shooting and rebounding. So, best wishes to Kim Aiken, with whatever, his situation is, whether, stuff going on in his personal life, we don't know. But I would not plan, get your hopes up that he's going to be back.
And then our next question from @PrellerForever, they ask, what does next year's basketball starting lineup look like? I am going to assume that Ben Mathurin declares for the draft. I mean, he's going to declare for the draft. Yes. Like, this is Ben Mathurin's last year playing for the Arizona Wildcats. Just Arizona fans, just brace for that. This is the last time you'll see Ben Mathurin play for Arizona. So Ben's going to be gone. I think Christian Coloco might take that jump and go to the NBA. I saw ESPN's latest mock draft. They have him at 35. So usually when you're flirting with that first round range, like, chances are you're going to go. But I think those are going to be the only two guys that leave. I think Azuolas comes back. I think you're going to have Kirk Risa also back at the starting point guard spot. Dalen Terry's going to come back. Pelle Larsson's going to come back. I think really the only person that you need to replace in the starting lineup is Coloco, and you can move Umar Ballo, or you can go to the transfer portal and get another big. So I would say Kirk Risa, Dalen Terry, Pelle Larsson, Azuolas Tubelis, Umar Ballo, or transfer. That's the starting lineup next year.
Yeah, I agree. And then you've got, like we talked about earlier, on the bench, Adama Ball, Shane Noel. So
and yeah, they're going to fit into what Pelle Larsson's doing right now.
Yep, plenty of depth still.
And then my favorite question of the mailbag from a guy by the name of @PissedUCLA fan. His name is Thick Mick. He says, right. How does it feel to have lost 6 straight against UCLA? Don't really care. That's a question for Arizona basketball fans. I just thought that Twitter identity was amazing. Thick Mick.
It is, but it does have to make Arizona fans a little unhappy that UCLA has really come on late, because it looked there for a while. 4 or 5 years ago, Arizona was really owning part of the rivalry, especially some of those Steve Alford teams that were underperforming, and Mick Cronin really being a home run hire, it looks like, for the Bruins for the future, unless that Louisville opening.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've heard some rumors that that Louisville should give Mick Cronin a phone call. I mean, they should.
They should. But will Mick Cronin listen? I don't know. I feel like UCLA is a better job out on the West Coast than Louisville, because that's tough. Or
if you're Mick Cronin, you give UCLA like the middle finger, or be like, ta-ta, see ya. Remember, I was your guys' 6th choice. Remember, Mick Cronin wasn't UCLA's top dog. So He's like, hey, I remember a few years ago when you hired me, I wasn't your first choice. Louisville, they went all out, made me their first choice. They made me feel wanted.
Remember when Rick Pitino was the front runner for the UCLA job?
Oh, yeah.
How funny would it be if Cronin goes to Louisville?
The world works in mysterious ways. It really does. And then Rick Pitino comes over and coaches ASU.
Yeah.
Bobby Hurley's gone, and then takes over at ASU. Ooh. We need Rick Pitino in the Pac-12.
We need
a villain. I know, like, people want to make Dana Altman the villain. I like Dana Altman. I think he's a good coach, and he's had Arizona's number over the last few years. But get a guy like Rick
wheels are
Pitino.
spinning in the Pac-12, man.
Love it, loving it. All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast podcast. Arizona women's basketball got a game against Stanford on Sunday. Top 10 matchup, number 8 versus number 2. And then the men's basketball team, they got a game this weekend against the ASU Sun Devils, the 6-11 ASU Sun Devils, I might add. I feel very confident in Arizona coming out on top in that game. But for all the latest on Arizona basketball, make sure you check out our content on Tucson.com and download that Wildcaster app. Like I said, it's free. Don't need a subscription. Just download it off the App Store and Google Play. And also, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the Wildcast podcast. We greatly appreciate that. For Alec, I'm Justin. Appreciate y'all for listening.